Welcome everyone to Season 2, Episode 75 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash Bika, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. In this episode, we are joined by a very special guest. You may know him. He is the Atlanta United play-by-play commentator for Fox Sports South, Kevin Egan. Super fun guy. Absolutely fun interview we had with him. A great conversation just about his life, his journey to becoming the play-by-play announcer for Atlanta United, his time covering some El Clasico matches. So please stick around for the interview to hear some of his great stories that he had to tell. But yeah, such a great person.
He's absolutely top lad. One of the nicest people I've ever talked to in my entire life. It's unreal. And we also wanted to give some shout outs to our fans for submitting some questions for this interview that went through. So we have Quentin, Burke, Luke, and Twitter user Chairman Story.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for those questions. They really helped in terms of contributing to contributing to this, to being a really good interview with Kevin. So we really do appreciate the support there. But yeah, please enjoy the interview. Well, thank you, Kevin, for joining us, especially on your birthday. So we want to wish you a happy birthday. It's kind of a historic scene on the Premier Pod because this is the first time we are recording an episode on someone's birthday. So you are making history.
What a pleasure. Yash, Tyler, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So we can go ahead and jump right into the question. So you grew up in Dublin, Ireland, and obviously this is the Premier Pod, a Premier League podcast. We wanted to know, did you grow up supporting or watching a Premier League team in your youth?
Obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. Any guesses as to who my team was or is?
Ooh.
All right, I'll give you a clue. There were several Irish players playing for this Premier League team back in the mid-90s. It's a tough one. I don't really expect you to get it. Let's just say I was anti-Man United and anti-Liverpool when I was a kid. It was just one of those situations where everybody in school in Ireland either supports Man United or Liverpool, and I didn't have an interest in either. And then we had one of my favourite players of all time, especially growing up, was Paul McGrath. And he was an outstanding defender, and he played for Aston Villa. And then Ray Houghton played for Aston Villa, and Andy Townsend and Steve Staunton. And there was just this beautiful Irish connection. And then there became this American connection to Aston Villa as well. So they naturally became my team. Although my mom claims that I said to her once that I supported Sheffield Wednesday on Wednesdays. I just don't really remember
that. Just on Wednesdays.
That's definitely interesting because if you didn't know, I'm actually a Manchester United fan and Tyler's a Liverpool fan. So it's definitely, hearing your story is definitely interesting. Aston Villa, wow, did not expect that.
Yeah, rough season this year, guys. And now all the debate about what's going to happen with the Premier League and how it's going to play out. Obviously, Villa fans, it's experiencing a bit of squeaky bum time because currently 19th in the Premier League, in the relegation zone, and they have a game in hand actually on the other Premier League teams. So in that area, there's 4 teams on 27 points, Villa on 25. You win that game in hand, you're out of the drop zone. But for now, it's a case of sitting back and waiting for the league to decide how they're going to do it.
Yeah, that's tough, and especially with like Jack Grealish, like all the accounts have him like linked to Manchester United and another move away. But I would say a bright spot, Indiana Vasilev, I believe, young American. So that's pretty cool to see breaking through in the Premier League.
Who's the Man United fan out of the two of you guys, by the way?
Yash, that's me right here.
Would you like to see Grealish at Man United?
That's a good question. I think I would, because I think he'll offer. All right, so this is a little bit tricky because before Bruno Fernandes came in, I would say yes, but since Bruno Fernandes has come in, he's kind of occupied that that main playmaker spot, and I feel like Jack Grealish, what's made him so successful is being that main playmaker, and I don't really see him being very successful just being deployed out in the wing. So in that sense, I don't know. I prefer them. Obviously, a dream signing would be to get someone like Jadon Sancho, but that's going to be very tough. Because I think since we kind of solved the midfield a little bit with Bruno Fernandes, I would prefer them to prioritize a winger. But, I mean, I wouldn't mind Jack Grealish. I think depth is always really important.
Yeah, it's expensive depth, though, isn't it? Because once you're an English player like Grealish and you've got extreme marketability, he's a good-looking guy. He's controversial at times, that's for sure. And look what he did during the coronavirus, heading out, breaching government rules and heading to a party and then driving drunk and crashing his car, like stupid stuff. and
Mm-hmm.
he can find himself in a bit of hot water. But I think he's a good fella. Deep down, I really think he is. He's just stupid. He's foolish, and he needs to make sure. I mean this in the nicest possible way. He's one of these guys, and I'm sure we all have friends. Sorry, my sister's FaceTiming me here. 1 second. Julie, I'm in the middle of a podcast with Yash and Tyler. Can I call you back? I'll call you back just on air here. Hey guys, bye bye. Call you back in a few minutes. Thanks guys.
Happy birthday, Uncle Kevin.
Love you. Talk to you in a little bit.
Love you too.
Bye bye. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
So I think Grealish is a character that is very likable within the dressing room. All the reports are from Villa that he's a captain for a reason too. He is a leader. However, he's easily led astray, and he's the type of guy. Some footballers. I had a great chat with Christian Vieri yesterday, Bobo Vieri, and I asked him about a time in his life when he was 21 years of age, and he's this. Sorry to go off on a tangent here, but Vieri is. Do you know Christian Vieri, Italian legend, top scoring Italian at the World Cup ever, and he was the most expensive player in the world heading into this new millennium, new century, and he's just a really good guy. And I got to work with him at beIN Sports in Miami, and I'm catching up with him yesterday, and I asked him about the time when he was 21, and he was going from Serie B team to Serie B team. And he was watching at the time the World Cup, and Roberto Baggio was leading the line for Italy. 4 years later, Christian Vieri was the second top scorer at that World Cup, partnering Roberto Baggio up front. And I asked him about being that age, at a young age, and influences around you. And often for us watching games, it's so easy to judge players and to say, oh, what a dope, what an idiot, this, that, and the other. But you don't know what that player's surroundings are like. And I think Grealish is the type of guy who just needs to have smart people around him. And oftentimes, I don't know if you saw an interview recently with Robin Van Persie and Jake Humphrey. He's a sports journalist and host in England. And Van Persie said he had to literally drop some of his best friends when they were younger, because he found that they were always wanting something from him. They never gave anything back. And also, they were just a bad influence. Like, he wasn't focused on his game when he was around them. And he had other friends that would encourage him. And, if there were temptations to go out one night, his other friends would be like, no, you've got a game, bud. You've got to focus. So I think when you have a situation when you're near the very top, like Grealish is, and he's not quite at the very, very top, he can be an England international if he really wants. You've got to surround yourself with positive influences in every walk of your life, because it's so important. Otherwise, you can veer to the right or left and make a big mistake like we've seen him do recently. Otherwise, though, to go back on your point about Bruno Fernandes, I tend to disagree with a lot of Man United fans that think he's the playmaker. I think he can be, but Bruno Fernandes is, I think he has been for Sporting for so many years, a box-to-box player. And he's much more of a Kevin De Bruyne than he would be a David Silva. And I think he's the type of guy who can go box to box for Man United. He's going to put in an absolute shift every week. And the United fans love him already. And I did a show, I remember last July, with Charlie Davies, and it was Bruno Fernandes and Sporting were playing against Liverpool in a pre-season tournament. You may remember this, Tyler. And it was in New York. And all the hype was about Liverpool, obviously. It was on Turner Sports, and we were working at Turner that day. And I was talking to Charlie beforehand, and my buddy Eric is a huge Sporting fan, and he's been banging on about Bruno Fernandes for the last 4 or 5 years, even during his time in Italy. And I said to Charlie, we have to watch Bruno Fernandes. And after the game, Charlie's like, listen, this guy is the business. Bruno Fernandes is the business. And how teams didn't snap him up earlier is beyond me. But I think he's definitely more of a De Bruyne, more of an 8. And I do think you could maybe fit a Grealish in further forward, in behind a Marcus Rashford, and allow him try and pull the strings from there.
No, I think that's very, very good points. I've always thought about, the people you surround yourself, even with, like, just our normal lives in general. Like, if you surround yourself with bad influences, like, eventually those bad influences will overcome you. So I think that's a pretty good perspective to have, especially with these younger players, because we just, like you said, we just don't know what's going on. We only see what we see on TV, so that's, I think that's a very good perspective to have. But kind of moving into, like, your time in, covering, stuff with beIN, and then, like, going to Spain and covering, like, El Clasico, how was that? Like, is there one moment you kind of remember covering the El Clasico, such a historic rivalry with two of, like, these mega clubs, Real Madrid and Barcelona?
Oh man, the hairs are standing up in the back of my neck when you even say that. The first time I covered El Clasico was April 2016, and Barcelona had the MSN, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. Real Madrid had the BBC, Bale, Benzema, and Cristiano, and the title looked to be in Barcelona's control. Real Madrid had a slight chance. Real Madrid were trailing. PK scored in the first half. Second half, Bale and Cristiano, or Benzema, excuse me, and Cristiano scored the winner in the 87th minute, and Ramos was sent off before that. It had everything. The game had absolutely everything. And I'll never forget, before that match, there was a tribute for Johan Cruyff, who had died that week. And Cruyff, obviously, a major influence on the Blaugrana and throughout Catalonia, even though he's Dutch. And I remember looking behind me as the Cruyff banners went up and as the players came out. And guys, close your eyes and imagine this. Messi, Ronaldo, the best players in the world, all walking out like gladiators into this cathedral of football. And the opera is playing. And this is what the way it is in Spain. Like the Spanish opera is playing. It's not like, Franz Ferdinand or something. It's the Spanish opera. And Real Madrid have their song, Hala Madrid. You have Barcelona have their song. And they're coming out into the Camp Nou. And I remember looking around, and all the banners around me were about Johan Cruyff. And there were these four men that must have been in their 80s, locked in arms, and they were crying like you wouldn't believe. They were mourning the death of Johan Cruyff. And I just thought, football is everything. Everything here. Everything. Like the front pages of every newspaper is the game. Like it's just so hard to believe. Like I don't speak Spanish, but I would try and decipher what it means, and I would get all the newspapers just to try and understand, and I'd try and translate certain things via Google, and I'd obviously Marca and AS and these other outlets over in Spain have English websites too, so you can go on and get the English version. But that moment when I saw those four older men crying was just something special. It was heart-wrenching, but it was also beautiful because Johan Cruyff changed the path of Barcelona, and the current mold, or certainly the mold at that time under Luis Enrique, and there was still, you saw Iniesta playing that day and Messi, and it was just so special to see that moment, and especially with the opera playing and the moment when they walked out onto the field, it genuinely did feel like I went back in time.
Wow.
Oh my.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool, especially like Tyler and I, like huge soccer fans. So like actually seeing someone that got to witness that, I mean, that's very, very cool.
I actually had the closest seat to Zinedine Zidane that day. So
Wow.
all my friends, I don't know how this played out that way, but we, being sports, we were the national broadcaster for the United States, but also the international broadcaster. A lot of the being sports isn't that big here in the US, but around the world it's huge with Africa, Asia. You go to Australia, being sports is the biggest soccer in particular channel over there. So for whatever reason, we got lucky and we had the closest seats to Zidane. And my Spanish-speaking producer, Marco Miranda, was translating everything for me that that was being said to Zidane and that was being said to Luis Enrique. And you just see when you're at the game, obviously you guys know it with Mercedes-Benz Stadium at Atlanta United, when you're at the game, you've got such a better perspective of what's going on. You're able to watch the game without looking at the ball. And that's when you notice pure genius in my mind, is when you watch a player who's able to naturally create space for himself. You don't often see that on TV. It depends how wide camera one is. But it's just such a glorious experience. And to be there at field level, the one player that really stood out to me that day, and I don't usually pick him out, but he was like a thoroughbred racehorse, was Gareth Bale at full pace back in 2016. He's a little bit older now, but full pace running past me. He was only like 1.5 meters, 2 meters away from me, running past at full speed. And you're just thinking, wow, he's a specimen.
Gareth Bale gives me PTSD from the Champions League final.
Yeah.
But the way you describe all these situations and your experience with El Clasico is just literally, it makes my own hairs stand. It's like I'm buzzing. It happened years ago. It's like, oh man, your storytelling ability is like crazy.
No, I don't know about that. I think it should be a lot better, and hopefully I'll keep improving on it. But it's a big part of obviously what we do and what you guys do too is telling stories, and that's what we do in commentary and hosting shows. And we've got to try and be and podcast hosts, and you guys will go on, I'm sure, and have wonderful careers in the industry. And it's a big part of what we do is trying to tell stories, and it's trying to paint the picture. And I tell you guys, if you get a chance to go to Spain, it doesn't matter. And here's the thing. If you can go to a game in the Basque Country, I'd nearly recommend that even more. go to San Sebastian and go see Real Sociedad, or go to see Athletic Bilbao, and go and watch them play, and see how crazy the fans are for Sevilla and Real Betis. Sevilla and Real Betis is probably the most underrated rivalry in world football. I just think Spain has something majestic about the atmosphere and the food beforehand, the opera, like I said, inside the stadium. It's a wonderful place to go watch football.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's actually funny because like we had another friend on the podcast recently tell us, it's like, oh, we got to go to a Sevilla game.
Yeah.
And now it's like we're hearing it from Kevin himself. It's like, all right, now we definitely have to go.
Yes.
Sevilla is somewhere I'd love to go to. Seville. I'd love to see. Sevilla Betis is on the bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
And like kind of going to the whole story behind just talking about games and just covering games, these kind of like just skills and just abilities that we have as podcasters and commentators, is when you're commenting on a game, you're basically kind of telling the whole story of what's going on as it goes on in real time. But I always wondered, in your position now as a commentator for Atlanta United and in other kind of games, is there anything that you have prepared for when games are just when not much is really happening, when it's kind of like a dead game or really sloppy game? Because I also saw in like another interview you had, like you only basically say about 10% of everything that you have prepared. So do you have anything just ready for those kind of situations where it's like, I'm gonna have to pull something out of my back pocket for this one?
Yeah, Tyler, it's a great point. And there are so many times in games. I'll give you an example. The Chicago Fire game last year in Bridgeview, and Atlanta United 5-0 down at halftime. 5-0. Think about that. LGP gets sent off. Gargan and I are in the booth looking at each other saying, what are we going to talk about now? Because at the end of the day, we want to be somewhat neutral, but we're still club broadcasters. We're still broadcasting for the Atlanta region, for Atlanta United. So we are in a sense homers, but I never want to come across like a homer on air. I hate when commentators, there's some commentators in the league that would refer to the players by their first names, and I just can't do that. Whatever, it's their prerogative. It's not for me. So there are times Gargan and I will talk all week long, and I think one of the biggest keys to anything you do in broadcasting is chemistry and understanding the person and the people you're working with. And we'll have chats on the phone. I will wreck his head. I'm a caller. I'm not a texter. So if he texts me, like my wife always gives out to me about this, because someone will text me and I'll call them back. And Meg is always saying to me, Kev, you can't do that. Like, people have lives. Like, they're texting you for a reason. And there's people going to be listening to this podcast going, yep, your wife's right. That's really annoying. And it is, I'm sure. So most of the time he'll answer, and we'll end up talking about the game. And there could be something on my mind, like, I think that last season, like, Villalba needs to be played here. And what did you think of when Nagby receives the ball in this area and space for, and Gargan and I will just get into these conversations. So then naturally, when something comes up in a game, he's going to know where my head's at. I'm going to know where his head is at. Now, there are other things that you can prepare as a tandem. We'll have notes, we'll have an A4 sheet, and we'll have maybe 12 or 14 talkers. So if there's a lull at any point, or if there's something that he feels he really wants to squeeze in the game, I'll just try and tee him up without asking him a question. I think sometimes in a game, it's important that commentators don't make it a Q&A. Like, a commentator can just mention something and the analyst knows where they're going, or I can give something a mention and point at the sheet, and Dan is going to know, okay, that's my cue to tee up this talking point. But oftentimes there's just a bit of a lull in a game, and quite frankly, that's okay, because we're there to try and help and complement the broadcast in any way possible. The players do all the business. They're the ones that are out there playing. And for you guys at home watching, you don't need commentators talking over absolutely everything. If the ball is in the middle of the field and there's a chance to lay out as a commentator and let the 17s take over in the crowd, if they're doing some chants that are so infectious, of course, don't talk over that. There's no need.
Yeah. I do agree with that, because like I went through like the University of Georgia Journalism School, and we definitely were taught to kind of communicate and have built a connection and partnership. But with the broadcasters I've kind of listened onto and that have gave advice to all of us, there's been like a difference in terms of like okay, some broadcasters love to like describe the moment, while some others, like if there's a big moment going on, let's say, for example, Atlanta United clinched like a game-winning goal to, win the MLS Cup, and some broadcasters like to take the step back and just let the crowd and let the raw emotion take
Mhm.
control. Where have you are you kind of like in the middle where you like commentating a little bit and describing the moment? Are you one of those that just likes to take the foot off the pedal and just let the crowd and let the emotion take over?
I think it's honestly, an outstanding question, Yash, and I'm somewhere in between. And to give it more context, I'll say it depends where the game is at. Let's say, for example, it happens in Bridgeview. I mentioned Chicago Fire in Bridgeview, and there's no one at the game, and Atlanta United create history. Now you've got to paint the picture an awful lot more because there's no one at the game. There's nothing for the director to really cut camera shots with. So you've got to have a smell for the game, have a smell for the moment, and understand where you're at. If I'm at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Josef Martinez creates history or the team win a major trophy, I'm going to get out of that moment as quick as possible and run away from it. Because I'm gonna not run away from it. I shouldn't say that, but I'm gonna have a quick line. It may be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words or whatever else, and then I'm gonna lay out because there's nothing more special than when the Atlanta United fans take over inside that stadium. It's absolutely brilliant, and I don't think any commentator in that stadium should make it about themselves.
Hmm.
There's some famous lines in history and wonderful commentaries of commentators, losing themselves in moments, which is beautiful at times. Um, and there's great moments where Peter Drury, for example, if you listen to his goal call
Hmm.
when Roma beat Barcelona,
Yes.
the
Oh yeah,
Manolus,
legendary.
Manolus goal call, it is. It's legendary, but I'm not capable of doing that. I don't have a Peter Drury-esque moment like that in me. At least I don't think I do. I'm just being honest with you guys. He is such a poet. For me, we all have different styles as commentators, and as radio hosts, bloggers, podcasters, TV hosts, whatever you may be, it's so important to be true to yourself and
Hmm.
and understand what you are and work on what you are and work on yourself rather than trying to be a John Champion, a Max Bredos, a Peter Drury, a John Strong. You figure out who you are and go after your own strengths, and that's not me. I would rather. I had the goal call for Josef Martinez for the leveler. And I quite enjoyed that call because I just simply said, Martinez. And then a 27 goal record, the Venezuelan has it. And then it was a case of laying out. And at that moment, it's about not ruining it. It's Joseph's moment. The fans are going to go nuts. The director has a field day with all the different camera shots. And it's just fun at that point. And I think it's about complimenting the moment and making sure you don't step in the way.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, this is so cool to hear because like since you're like commentator for so long with Atlanta United, just it's kind of weird to think that you're the voice I've heard just for like hours now. We're finally just hearing from your perspective about how you think about all this, which is crazy.
It's
And
really hard, honestly, Tyler. It's difficult. I can't tell you how hard it is. Sometimes when a goal goes in and you're thinking, and you might just in a split second say, "No, don't say that. Don't say that." But you've got to get it right. You don't get this back. So if you pre-tape a show, you can always decide to. I did an intro for a piece I was doing yesterday. I recorded it about 35 times because I wanted it to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I hated it. Every time I kept thinking, and even though I'd say the first time it was absolutely fine, usually it would be absolutely fine, the fact that I could record it again meant that I did it again and again and again. Whereas with a goal call, when you're live and everybody's watching, that's it. That's it. If you make a mistake, it's gone to Mars. You're never going to get it back. So it's about getting it right and keeping it simple. Don't try and overcomplicate things.
so we had a last question before we had some questions from our fans, but this kind of goes in tandem with what we've been talking about. And it's so you've been the Atlanta United commentator for, the past few seasons, and it's basically like a dream goal, at least for me, and pretty sure for Yush too, just to have commentary or just be able to talk about soccer just as your job. Is there another goal that you think that you have in mind beyond that from where you stand now? Because for now it's like from my perspective it's like, oh, he's made it, but is there anything that's above that in your head?
like absolutely. My wife will often give out to me because I just sometimes have sleepless nights, or I'd sometimes wake up at like 3, 4, 5 a.m. because my mind is racing because I think about a job, or I think about certain opportunities or certain ideas for shows. And I adore the industry. I absolutely love it, and I mean it sincerely. Since the first day I got a chance to work on the Olympics in 2004, making tea and coffee, back in Ireland, I remember the red light coming on in the studios and me having to carefully tiptoe in with the tea and coffee for the hosts and the analysts. And from that moment, as a 19-year-old, I was just obsessed, and I still have that feeling. So for me to ever think I turned 35 today, that I certainly have not made it, not a chance. In my mind, it's like I'd imagine footballers are the same. There's no footballer will be content where they're at. If they score 35 goals in a season, they're going to want to go even better the following year. And that's what makes maybe, Messi and Ronaldo and Zlatan and the likes of these guys that have such longevity and consistency in their career, what makes them so great. And I'm certainly not saying I'm great, but I aspire to be great, and to try and have a career in this industry for a very long time. It's an extremely fickle industry. It's an extremely insecure industry. There's an awful lot of pitfalls. There's an awful lot of things that people don't speak about because naturally they're insecure, because there's only one Atlanta United job, for example. There's only one
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta United
Mhm.
TV play-by-play job. Therefore, with that comes pressure. You have to perform. I think you have to be likable. You have to get along with people. You have to want to work with the production staff and everybody involved. And with that comes pressure. So people don't want to talk about the hardships or the difficult times. I would say that 95% of people that go into this industry all in don't end up getting a career out of it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so hard to think about that. And it just separates the ones that really, really, really want it and live and breathe for it. Like Jill Sakovitz, for example. Jill is such a hustler. She really, really is. Jill is always thinking about opportunities, thinking about, I need to have a chat with this person, that person. She's just a go-getter. And I admire her for that so much. She works so hard at getting better all the time. And what I'd like to think about, especially Dan comes at it from a different angle. Dan runs a soccer school for 5,000 kids in St. Louis. He is really into broadcasting and he takes the job so seriously, but he comes from the playing side and he's also got a different job. So he's the analyst, he's focusing on soccer only. Whereas Jill and I, for example, are obsessed with the industry and the way the show is pieced together. And we're looking at it like nearly like architects of how we piece together this show and how we're going to make it look good. And we do that with our producer Eric Kendall, director Tom Hewitt, and we've got a good team. Um, but I absolutely, I'm with you guys. You're never settling. I want to do this Atlanta United job forever. Don't get me wrong, but I also want other jobs. And the relationship I have with Atlanta United is a freelance one, so I can do this, and I've also signed a contract with CNN, and I'm doing stuff with some other companies like Turner Sports and with MLS, and I'm doing some esports as well. So I want to try and get out there. I want to be as busy as possible. I'm happiest when I'm working and when I'm busy. So that's why quarantine's probably been a bit tough, but at least I'm with my wife and my son and we're having fun. But there, of course, I want to host the Champions League. I want to commentate on the biggest games. I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I think that's always a good philosophy to have, just always to like move forward and think forward. But yeah, that was very insightful. But
Here's why, yeah,
quickly,
just one quick thing. Here's why.
yeah,
Because once you settle and once you sit still, that's when you become
mm-hmm.
stagnant. You've got to
Yes,
always have your tail up. You've got to always think, all right, next. Like they always say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
mm-hmm.
Now, I love the job I have. I don't mean it that way, but the reason there's a saying like that is because you have to stay on your toes at all times, and you've always got to be good to people. And there's people in this industry that forget that very quickly, and that can be quick to be rude to people, or they think they're something that they're not. We're nobodies. We're absolutely nobodies. We're tiny little ants on this earth that are look at the size of the planet that we're on and the universe that
Mm-hmm.
we're in. We are so unbelievably insignificant. It's laughable, and yet sometimes people think they're something and they develop an ego. It shouldn't happen, especially in a fun industry like we're in right now, talking about football. So we're
Mm-hmm.
very lucky to be doing what we do, and I just hope I can stay in this industry for a long time to come.
Yes. Especially with that work ethic, like I'm hoping the best too. But quickly moving on to some questions from the fans. Question from Quinton is, what do you think is the best goal Josef Martinez has ever scored for Atlanta United?
Oh man, the best goal Josef ever scored for Atlanta United. Okay, quickly scanning each season. 2017, 2018. Okay, so best goal. The one that comes to mind straight away, obviously goal of the year from last year, Cincinnati, when he takes it. The thing about last year's goal against Cincinnati was, watch it back. It's a first-time pass from Julian Gressel after Tito Villalba had put pressure on the ball, forces a turnover. Gressel plays a first-time volley into the path of Martinez, but he's got a defender right beside him, and he cushions the ball with the outside of his foot in the air. So that first touch was unbelievable. Then he separates himself, fakes a shot, takes it back onto his left foot, bends it. He fakes twice actually, and bends it into close to the top corner. So that was a phenomenal goal in terms of the technical side of the game. The other goal, which I love from Josef, is away against Portland. I believe that was last season as well, when Gressel plays, again, Gressel involved with Josef. Surprise, surprise. Unbelievable relationship. He plays this pass that, threads the needle through the defense. Josef running onto it. That telepathic relationship between those two. And Josef tucks it into the top corner away against Portland. An unbelievable win away against Portland last year. So I'm probably going to go with the one against Cincinnati. In saying that, though, there's others like Josef's ability to climb in the air against New York City FC. Again, it's a Gressel cross, actually. Surprise, surprise. From the right-hand side. And Josef had no right to get on that ball. Gressel even said it was a poor cross. And Josef still managed to climb above a tall defender. I think it was Maxime Chanot, and put it away. So, and obviously then you've got the MLS Cup, rounding the keeper, tucking it away, a real opportunist. So with all four of those goals that I picked out, you see different traits that Josef has. He's a killer. He's an absolute killer.
Yeah, I agree. When is the statue being built for Josef outside Mercedes-Benz? That needs to happen soon.
So what's your favorite goal, by the way?
I definitely have to go with the Cincinnati one. I'm always a fan for just like a good team playing goal, just like everything surrounding it. I do admire, solo effort goals. I think those are phenomenal. But when you have the whole team, the pressing, the pass, the touch, the shot, I think I gravitate towards that, I would say.
All right. Well, Yash, if you gravitate towards the team goal, there's one better goal than Cincinnati. And if you remember it, again, I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. Philadelphia away. Oh my goodness. Darlington Nagbe, Pity Martinez, Josef Martinez, that trident and that play that it was Darlington to Pity, Pity to Josef, Josef to Nagbe, Nagbe to Josef, around the keeper, tucks it in. And that was just majestic. I mean, that goal for me, that's the best team goal in Atlanta United history, in my mind. The best individual goal for Josef was probably Cincinnati.
Yeah, those are some great goals.
So the next question, we'll go through these a little quick because we don't want to keep you too long since
no stress,
it's your birthday. So we got another question from Burke, and he asks, what is your pre-game meal, if you have one?
Pre-game meal? I'm not playing, Burke. I'd say Gargan would be laughing his head off right now if he heard this question, because he'd probably say everything. So at Atlanta United at the stadium, the press meal is outrageously good. Outrageously good. I mean, there's starters, main course, dessert, everything. They've even got an ice cream machine up there. Yeah, you can get yourself a nice whipped ice cream, put some M&Ms on there. Not that I don't do that, honestly. For me, before a game, less is more, because I like a bit of protein. Like I'll have some chicken or some steak, and maybe a little bit of salad. I don't want to be too full, and I certainly here's a key to the commentator. You don't want to be, when you eat Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, you're so full you nearly have a little bit of, like, you're burping a little bit. You've got a little, you don't want to have, you just don't want to have that in any way possible. So just a little bit of protein and some salad probably is the answer, because I want to be able to get involved in the game and do my job properly without thinking about the fact that I'm full.
I like that. Keep it light. Keep it, just keep it light. So you got the mobility and everything. You definitely don't want to be stuffed, like going into a broadcast.
Better question is what post game meal.
Ooh.
The post-game meal is always the one that myself, Jill, and Dan will go for food afterwards and have a drink and have a chat and have a laugh and dissect the game and what went right
Is
and
it
wrong. So that's
is
always.
there a favorite spot you have near Mercedes-Benz that you guys tend to go to?
Yeah, there is actually, and it's only because Jill and Dan stay over by Midtown. So
Mhm.
where they stay when they're in is it's right next to. We don't stay at I think it's the Four Seasons. We don't stay at the Four Seasons at all. We're not that fancy, but there's a bar in the Four Seasons, and the reason we go there is it's quiet. It's a beautiful bar, and it's easy to get food and relax, and you can have a chat, and you can always get a couch type seat. So we're not going to a packed bar or anything. After a game, you're absolutely exhausted. You've been on it since we have a meeting at 9 a.m. day of game.
Mm.
So we have a meeting all together at 9 a.m. and then we don't go on air until 7 p.m. So by the time I get down to the guys, we all meet together, have breakfast. We go through the rundown, the script of the show. We talk about changes. We analyze everything. That's when we talk about pretty much every scenario in a way. In the pre-game show, post-game show, and we devour the whole rundown. Then I'll go home, have some breakfast or lunch. I'll keep going on my notes and my game day prep. Make a few phone calls if need be. I've mentioned before I'm a big phoner. Like people that know me well and friends of mine and people in the industry know I love it. I love a good chat and to talk through game scenarios on the phone, and I chat to maybe a couple of players or coaches, and then I've got to get dressed, get to the stadium. Dan and Jill probably get there a little bit after me. I like to get there really early if I can, like 3.5 hours before we go on air, and just so I'm in the booth and I can. Here's the crazy thing: is you end up chatting to people and you want to be really polite because people are kind and they want to say hi and they want to chat, but sometimes you just have a job to do and
Yeah.
you need to stay in the moment. But it's difficult to stay in the moment while being polite if you don't want to chat to someone. And so that's why I'd rather get there early, say my hellos to people around the stadium and have fun, quite honestly, and still feel fully prepared. And I like to walk the field. That's another tradition that Gargan and I have, especially away from home. In Mercedes-Benz, we've been there so many times and the roof is closed most of the time. So the elements don't really come into it. Whereas away from home, you've got different style of grass at certain places, different temperature, how much have they watered the grass, how tight is the grass. The Real Madrid chief groundsman's a friend of mine, and I've talked to him about
Wow.
being a groundsman, and his name is Paul, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's like, look, I got to meet him when I was over at a Clasico, the first or second time I did Clasico, and he said Zidane wanted me to cut the grass really, really tight, and he wants me to water it. He wants this pitch as fast as possible tomorrow. And I
Wow.
remember thinking, that is fascinating that you've got instructions from a coach to a groundsman as to how he wants the grass to
That's
play.
wild.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every single situation is thought of for these big games. So that's why Gargan and I like to walk the pitch and talk about the surface, and he'll have observations from playing. That's why I love to pick his brain.
Nice. And we have just two more questions. Obviously, we're running close to like that time. But question from Luke is, what is your favorite soccer moment while commentating, and your favorite moment as a fan/spectator?
Okay, so the moment I talked about at the Clasico, when the players
Yes.
walk out, that for me is it's an absolutely outrageously cool moment when you see Messi and these guys, and you're watching Messi warm up, Ronaldo warm up. Ronaldo, one year at the Bernabeu, was doing his stretches right next to me, and seeing that, like I said about Bale, he's a specimen. Ronaldo's that physical specimen as well, that it doesn't look human. So that side of things, as a broadcaster, to have been to big Champions League games and big La Liga games was so special. As a broadcaster commentating, let me see. I really enjoyed calling a playoff game last year. We usually don't get to call playoff games because it goes to Fox or ESPN National. So to call Escobar's winner against New England in the playoffs last year was really cool. But I mean, at every single moment at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I find myself thinking, what if this is the last time I get to do this? Take it in. And I think about that far too often. I'm probably I probably think too much, and I always think like this is just enjoy it. Just enjoy every single second. You've done your prep. You're ready. Just enjoy it. So yeah, that and as a fan, wow. As a fan, there's probably several. A lot of them involve Ireland, the national team playing. Big Ireland national team fan. So
Yeah.
I think beating Italy at the Euros in 2016 when Robbie Brady scored a header was absolutely epic. And going back to the days of 2002, Robbie Keane at the World Cup when Ireland drew with Germany, or we're in that big game against Spain and narrowly lost on penalties. Those are some of the best moments because I get to watch them with my dad. And living abroad that's one of the biggest killers for me, is that I'm so close to my family, as you heard from my sister calling me with her kids. And, to be away from home and not catch these games with my dad is tough. And especially Gaelic football games, like our sport in Ireland is called Gaelic football and hurling. And my dad was a Gaelic footballer that played for Dublin in the 70s and has several All-Ireland medals. So he was a wonderful player. And a chance to watch the games with him and go to the stadium with him when I'm home is just something you can't beat.
Nice.
Man. All right. So, yes, I got the last one.
Yeah, you got the last question.
All right. So this one's a little out of left field, but this is one that we kind of saw that is kind of related to your personality, and is that apparently you like wearing jorts.
Oh, stop it. Come on, Tyler.
So our final question to you is, kind of thinking on our feet and also just looking into the future. We feel like living in the South, it's just, it does not match well when you have to wear a suit and tie in like 90-degree weather. It's just, it shouldn't be allowed. And I think the next step would be to have some kind of business shorts, like jorts, something like that. So if this was your PSA, this podcast episode was your PSA to the world for why we should have jorts be a norm in the business world, what would you say?
Guys, can I tell you a bit of backstory on this? Kay Murray is my dear friend that I worked with her being sports, outstanding host now at ESPN. And I remember I was shopping in Miami one day and I went into a store and I was chatting to this guy and he was a lot cooler than I am. A lot cooler. And I'm chatting to him and I said, what about like jean shorts? And he looked at me and he was very tanned and he could get away with it. He didn't have pale white Irish skin like me. And he looks at these jorts that he would wear and he would absolutely pull off. And he's like, I think these are great, man. And I was like, well, if you think they're great, I'm going to get them because you're really cool. And so I tried them on and I thought they were cool. And then I went home and my wife was like, you didn't buy them, did you? And I said, yeah, I think they're great. And I wore them one time into work because it was like a Saturday and a casual day. I remember people were just laughing at me. So I continue to rock the jorts just for the sake of it because I really don't care what people think. It's just and I self-deprecating enough to have a laugh about it. So Kay is always bringing up the jorts, and I've still got the jorts upstairs. And just for the fun of it, I will never get rid of those jorts. But if I had to petition for a certain type of short to wear, I'd probably go to Lululemon and be like, come up with some sort of beautiful material that means we're not going to sweat too much in Houston on a Saturday afternoon, in July, and help us out here. Yeah, if we didn't have to wear full suit and tie in summertime in Texas, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Tyler's out here bringing like the hardball questions right here, taking on the beat. But
just before I came on, I thought there was a question about Newcastle. That's why before I came on, I started looking at Newcastle and what the latest is.
We had a quick question from Twitter user Chairman Story. You can answer this really quickly. You're the new owner of Newcastle United. Who is your manager and who is going to be your first signing if you're the new owner?
Manager is Pochettino, if you can get him.
Okay.
And that's if he wanted to go there. I do think it's a stretch. If not Pochettino, I would go all out for Marcelo Gallardo from River Plate and see if you can convince him to go across, because he is that passionate character that Newcastle United fans adore. So that would be my coach, I think. And if you could get a player to suit the Newcastle way, the hardworking, blue collar, in your face, move out of my way, I'm going to run right over you. That sort of a player. You need a striker. You need someone who you can get. This player has about a year left on his contract, just over a year, June of 2021. If you can keep him fit, it will be winner, winner, chicken dinner, and the fans would absolutely love him. That player for me will be Diego Costa.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Imagine Diego Costa up front with Miguel Almiron.
Oh, they would love him.
Man, back in the Premier League, Diego Costa.
I think it'd work.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Now that I think about it, they would definitely love someone that just is not afraid to get in someone's face. I would say that, and can score a lot of goals.
And more importantly, he can hold the ball up. I mean, the way Newcastle play now, you need a striker who can hold the ball for you because you're defending so deep. But if you got Marcelo Gallardo or Mauricio Pochettino, I think your playing style would change drastically from Steve Bruce.
Yes. But yeah, I think with that, that's the end of our questions. So we want to thank you, Kevin, so much for taking the time, especially on your birthday, to come on the podcast. Hopefully we didn't keep you too long and you can go back to your wife and kid and hopefully settle on a movie and you guys can have a nice night in. But yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, for taking the time to come on. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for asking me, guys. Great pleasure. Keep up the great work. Really loving the show.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening to the episode. If you like what you hear, please make sure to rate, comment, subscribe. The ratings really do help us. It helps us become more visible to people and have our podcast more out there for everyone to see. But yeah, continue showing that support on Twitter. Continue commenting, getting that interaction. We love hearing what you guys have to say. But yeah, other than that kind of does it for us in this episode. Thank you guys so much. Peace.
Peace.